Today, August 15th, marks the 50th anniversary to the day of President Nixon going off the gold standard in the United States. I thought I would commemorate this event and explain what happened. In this video, I'll go over what the gold standard was, the negative repercussions of going off of it, clear up some lies said about gold, and discuss what it would take to go back to a gold standard, and so much more coming up. Hey everyone, welcome to Campbell's Coins, a special Sunday video for you all. Let's dive into it. What is the gold standard? The gold standard is a monetary system where a country's currency or paper money has a value directly linked to gold. The United States was on a gold standard from its inception in 1789 through 1971. Our own Constitution explicitly states, "No state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque and reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payments of debt." However, there is a loophole here which the banks found a way around. It says no state shall make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payments of debt, but it says nothing of the federal government creating currency or money. What happened and why did Nixon take the United States off the gold standard? Most people from the 30s through the 60s didn't invest in the stock market. Those that played the stock market were thought of as risk takers or gamblers. Back then, most people purchased US savings bonds or they saved their money in the banks. For those who don't know, a US savings bond is a certificate where you put in, say, like $5, and in 10 years, you can cash it in for $25. Not a huge amount of growth in a long period of time, but it's still growth. On Sunday, April 15th, 1971, a special presidential message was broadcast over television, interrupting the most popular TV show of the time, Bonanza, and forever changing the United States dollar.
The third indispensable element in building the new prosperity is closely related to creating new jobs and halting inflation. We must protect the position of the American dollar as a pillar of monetary stability around the world. In the past 7 years, there's been an average of one international monetary crisis every year. Now, who gains from these crises? Not the working man, not the investor, not the real producers of wealth. The gainers are the international money speculators. Because they thrive on crises, they help to create them. In recent weeks, the speculators have been waging an all-out war on the American dollar. The strength of a nation's currency is based on the strength of that nation's economy. And the American economy is by far the strongest in the world. Accordingly, I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
Back then, other countries could send US dollars back to the US in exchange for gold. This action ended the gold standard, forcing other countries to not only use our dollar, but now they couldn't get physical gold as agreed upon with the Bretton Woods System. The United States did this because many countries, most notably France, noticed that the US was printing a lot of money and they didn't trust that the US had the gold to back all the spending that they were doing. The French began sending dollars back in exchange for physical gold. Other countries soon followed suit, and we were hemorrhaging our physical gold to all these other countries.
Now, what is this action, which is very technical, what does it mean for you? Let me lay to rest the bugaboo of what is called devaluation.
This simply isn't true. Can you buy more today than you could, say, in 1971 or even 10 years ago? The answer is no. It costs more today than it did back then. That is dollar devaluation.
If you want to buy a foreign car or take a trip abroad, market conditions may cause your dollar to buy slightly less. But if you are among the overwhelming majority of Americans who buy American-made products in America, your dollar will be worth just as much tomorrow as it is today. The effect of this action, in other words, will be to stabilize the dollar.
There is a few other problems too. Most people today buy their products from outside the United States, mostly from China. It is our fault. We sent all of our production overseas. There's very little production within the US now compared to a couple decades ago, like the 1970s. And the prices are still fluctuating as import taxes are placed on these products, and the prices of the products go up due to demand and supply of materials. I think most of the US noticed the issue with the lack of production here in the US when COVID hit and the supply chain was disrupted.
Now, this action will not win us any friends among the international money traders. But our primary concern is with the American workers and with fair competition around the world. To our friends abroad, including the many responsible members of the international banking community who are dedicated to stability in the flow of trade, I give this assurance. The United States has always been and will continue to be a forward-looking and trustworthy trading partner. In full cooperation with the International Monetary Fund and those who trade with us, we will press for the necessary reforms to set up an urgently needed new international monetary system. Stability and equal treatment is in everybody's best interest. I am determined that the American dollar must never again be a hostage in the hands of international speculators. I'm taking one further step to protect the dollar, to improve our balance of payments, and to increase jobs for Americans. As a temporary measure, I am today imposing an additional tax of 10% on goods imported into the United States. This is a better solution for international trade than direct controls on the amount of imports. This import tax is a temporary action. It isn't directed against any other country. It's an action to make certain that American products will not be at a disadvantage because of unfair exchange rates. When the unfair treatment is ended, the import tax will end as well. As a result of these actions, the product of American labor will be more competitive, and the unfair edge that some of our foreign competition has will be removed. This is a major reason why our trade balance has eroded over the past 15 years.
As Nixon said, this was all supposed to be temporary. Paul Volcker, who was with Nixon as he broadcast this video from Camp David, also thought it was temporary and thought that the gold standard would return when things calmed down. Except we never returned to it. All of these things taken from us happened in stages. It started in World War I when the US citizens were asked for their gold. The government said, don't worry, we'll pay you. You can still exchange your paper currency for gold. And then Roosevelt made it illegal to own gold in 1933. Things are taken away from us in the slightest of increments, our rights being most notable. They are slowly chipped away until after a few decades, there is nothing left. I believe this is called piecemeal. Not to be hyperbolic, but taking the US off the gold standard was the final straw that broke the back of the dollar. The gold standard was keeping the volume of dollars printed in check. When the gold standard was ended, there was nothing holding back the printing presses. And as we can see, the amount of US debt or money printing has increased dramatically since 1971. As of the filming of this video, August 15th, 2021, the US national debt stands at $28 trillion and is rapidly increasing. And 35% of this debt was made last year in 2020. This $28 trillion, is all the money printed since the beginning of the United States in 1789, and 35% of it was created in just 2020. It's pretty difficult to believe. The ending of the gold standard was also the death of savers. When your dollar buys less and less year after year, it doesn't make sense to save it. People will argue the economy grew tremendously after the US was taken off the gold standard, and that is true. With great rises, though, were great falls, and not just harsher falls, but more frequent economic problems. How many of you have heard of Ursa? I'm betting not much. In 1974, Congress passed the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, which forced everyone into the stock market. Remember when I said that between the 30s and the 70s, most people were savers? This act turned everyone into gamblers, except all the new gamblers had no idea what they're doing and lost their money in the stock market. All retirements now were based upon a 401k, and these were put into the stock markets. Many of you know about the 2008 economic crisis and how many banks were bailed out, or that there was like $800 billion and that was the huge uproar at the time. Did you know that the bailout for banks continued through 2020? Most of the stuff isn't announced in the news in terms that the population would understand. It's purposely misleading and confusingly rephrased as to not cause a panic, to keep up this false confidence. It's all a confidence game. The longer you think things are fine, they're going to be fine. When most arrive to the realization that things do not make sense and they pull out of the game, this is when the house of cards crumbles. Probably one of the most prolific lies out there about the gold standard is that there isn't enough gold for our economy. There is enough gold for any economy. The issue comes in terms of valuation. Is there enough gold for our economy if it's valued at $35 an ounce? Definitely not. What about $1,800 an ounce? Still very low compared to how much money we've printed in our debt. Is there enough gold for our economy if it's valued at, say, $15,000 an ounce or more? Now we're starting to get into the realm of possibility. I see a gold reevaluation in the neighborhood of what we see on usdebtclock.org. If we need to do that, we're looking at a little over $20,000 per ounce gold. A gold system or a gold standard may not be flashy, but it is stable. We would still have growth and innovation, it just wouldn't be to the extreme levels we see today. 20 years ago, the stock market was around 10,000 points. Today it's around 35,000 points. How is it going up that much when the world was almost crippled by the 2008 financial crisis? Why are we bailing out banks in 2020 if everything is doing great? If the United States went back to the gold standard, I could see them once again making gold illegal for US citizens to own. They would revalue it to some high level like 20,000 and ask people to surrender their gold for the good of the nation. People seeing these high prices would be extremely enticed to trade in their gold for paper currency or central bank digital currencies, also known as cbdc's. In fact, the second most viewed video on my channel covers this exact hypothetical situation. In this video, I show a few polls I put up on my Instagram page asking about what price would get you to sell your gold. I didn't say it was the end of the world or that there was high inflation. I simply asked, if you were offered, say, $15,000, would you sell your gold? To my surprise, many said yes, they would. A good majority of you in the comments of that video talked about how you would buy land and other assets. That's great and all, but what if prices for gold and or land continue rising after you sell? You sold out at too low of a price. Additionally, if they make gold illegal for you to own and you try to use it to convert to paper currency or what more likely would be CBDCs, they would tax you heavily for retaining gold instead of turning it in during the specified turn-in period. This is why I advocate to trade your gold for valuable assets. Find landowners who recognize gold's true fundamental value and leave the system out of it. On a final note, I wanted to discuss silver in this return to the gold standard hypothetical. If we were to go back to a gold standard, this would be great news for silver. Many people wouldn't be able to afford a $20,000 piece of gold. They might be able to afford a fractional piece, maybe a quarter ounce or a tenth of an ounce, but when they realize how small that piece is for the price that they're paying, they're going to turn their attention towards another metal, silver. They will see how much silver they can own for the same price that they would get for a tenth of an ounce of gold and choose the silver instead. The price of silver will then skyrocket. We saw this in the 1980s and in the late 2000s. People want to get more for their money, and silver will be extremely appealing. With everything going on in our economy and other economies around the world, I advocate for buying physical gold and silver while their prices are under their true fundamental value. If you're interested in other topics like this one, check out the other videos I have on my channel discussing these metals and how they can help you preserve and protect your wealth. If you made it this far in the video, you guys and gals are my super stackers and collectors, and I greatly appreciate you. Thank you all for watching. This is Campbell's Coins, and that is my 2 cents.